Step 1, making the starter. So I've got in here some leftover starter. You can just see it's yesterday's. So just to give an idea how much is in there, here's the same container that's empty. It weighs 84 grams. And this one here is 295 grams. So we've got approximately 200 grams of starter left over in that. There is still some bubbles in it, as you can see. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in 4 large tablespoons, and I mean heaped tablespoons. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So now you can see there's quite a bit of flour in there. I'm taking a knife. I'm just going to add just a bit of water, not too much. You can always add some more, but with the knife I'm going to stir it, and I'm going to get to really work it into the corners. Scoop it off the sides and really work it into paste. And as you start to stir it in, you can scoop it off the sides like that. But you see it gets really, really sticky. So scoop it off the knife and start again. So all the original starter that was in the container needs to be combined with the new flour and water that you've got. I find a knife is better for this because it's so sticky. It allows you to scoop it off the sides and mix it up well. Okay, so I think we're there with that. Scoop it off the edge. So now you can see the consistency of this. So it's not liquid, but it's flowing gently, but it's keeping its slight slight shape on the top. So it's not liquid enough so it's gone all flat on the top. You can see there's still some lines and marks over here on it. So then I'm going to put the lid on the top, and this is just a regular plastic lid for these containers, and I'm going to just clip it in on the 2 sides. I'll leave these 2 sides open, so I'll have a little bit of moisture coming into that. That's going to now sit on the counter till about 7 o'clock tonight. That's step 1. Right, here we are in step 2 of John's sourdough with mates. Anyway, enough joking aside. I've got some ingredients laid out for you here. I've got some strong white, it's just called baker's flour, it's plain flour. I've got some psyllium husk. I've got some organic stone ground flour, which I bought in Henry's if you live here, and a little bit of salt, some sourdough starter, and some lukewarm water. So it's a fairly simple process for this part of it. As I said, this is step 2. I think there's 8 steps. So we will start off. We've got 400 grams of the plain baker's flour in the bowl. I've got 100 grams of the organic stone ground flour, plain flour again. In it goes. You don't have to have that, but it adds a little bit of fiber to it, as well as the psyllium husk. I just have 2 tablespoons of psyllium husk in there. That goes. That helps to bring the dough together and make it easier to work with later on. And I've got 1 tablespoon, a flat tablespoon of salt, just for extra flavor, and it also helps bring the gluten together, apparently. Learned that from a master baker before. Right, so that's the dry ingredients before I get my hands in there. In here I've got 350 grams of lukewarm water. Now we will use extra water later on, but I tend to bring it in with my hands. Here we have our starter. And we fed the starter this morning during step 1, and we marked it on the bowl or on the container here where we were. So that's where it was, and it has risen well. There's a light vinegar flavor of that, and as you can see, there's some nice bubbles on it, so that's a good active starter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add approximately, no science to this, but approximately 3/4 of the starter to the lukewarm water. And as we put it in, you'll see that it will all float on the top. Beautiful. So again, there's about that much left. I'll just cover that off. And that stays there until we cook tomorrow. So don't feed it tonight. We'll feed that tomorrow morning. So with the knife here, I'm just going to gently, with the flat knife, I'm going to break this up in the water a little bit. So it makes kind of like a milk. Doesn't have to be exact, but I'm just using it to break it up. And I will just leave that now for a moment. Back to my dry ingredients. You don't have to sieve these, but it is important to mix them and aerate them. Sometimes baker's flour gets some flour kind of lumps in it, tiny little lumps of flour. So you just need to get those out with your fingers. So I'm just getting those out. Mixing it up. I can feel the salt go to the bottom of the bowl. There's a little bit of a lump there. There we go, good enough. Now I'm just going to give this sourdough water, milky kind of texture, a bit of a stir, and just chuck it all in. So I'm just going to start to bring it together just with the knife. And it will start to look a little bit dry in a moment. That's okay. Try and get as much of that off the sides. And it's starting to come together. Now what I'm going to do is a little bit of extra water. This is just to wet my hands. If you put your dry hands in here, it'll just stick to your hands like glue. I'm just going to wet my hand and I'm just going to bring it in to the middle like this. This is lukewarm water. So I'm just going to bring it in. As you can see here, it's starting to come together. I'm not really kneading it. All I'm doing is really getting the dry bits of the flour all mixed together with water. And this is where the extra water comes from. This is why technically there's probably about 370 or 80 mils of water in the entire thing, but it helps to bring it in my hands, because as you can see, it stops my hands from getting sticky. So I finished mixing that up, and as you can see there, it's all coming together. And just with a little flexible spoon like this, I'm just going to scoop it down off the sides of the bowl and just bring it in to the middle like this. And I'm just gently turning the bowl as I go. So it's just to make sure there's no dry bits underneath. You can see like that, there's no dry bits. And now it all scooped down. Now it's going to sit here for 30 minutes. So I'm going to cover it. I've got a damp linen cloth. Linen is good because it doesn't leave any fibers. It's going to be covered. Put a plate over it just to keep the moisture of the cloth in, and it has to sit there now for 30 minutes. So we'll come back to step 3 in 30 minutes time, where we start to fold the bread. We don't need the bread at all. It's all folding process. It's about 6:30. We're back shortly in a half an hour. Step 3. The dough has been sitting in here for a half an hour and it still looks the same. So what this process is called is stretching the dough. There's 2 processes to stretch the dough. The first one we'll show here is in the bowl. So we're just going to use our device to scrape it off the bowl for a second. As you can see, there's nothing stuck there, so that's good. Now I'm just going to wet my hands, because remember, this dough is very sticky. And then we're just going to pull the dough up, and I'm just going to let it slide down like that. So we've stretched it a few inches and just drop it down. 90 degrees, do it again, and then do it again. So each time we're not puncturing the dough. We don't want it to break. we're just allowing it to stretch a little bit. That gets all the good glutens in there working. And what we can do is we can take it like this and we can fold it in on itself. And that's the first way to stretch the dough in the bowl. You can do it like that every time. The next step, we'll do it on the counter. So now in this part of the process, we'll call this process 3A. We're going to do a counter fold. So if you see here, the dough starting to expand slowly, and you can actually see where the wholemeal flour is starting to come through as well. So we'll scoop this off the side with the spatula, keeping it damp, and when it's all not sticking to the side, I will gently wet the counter. So now I'm going to put it out the counter like that, and we're going to do a different type of stretch. So we're just going to take the edge of the dough, and we're going to fold it over, then we'll fold it over this way. So it's just about a fold like that. So making a little parcel. Then we'll turn it here again and give it a stretch, and we'll fold it in, turn it around, and we'll fold it in. So we can even do that again. It's good to work the dough. This is what creates layers inside the bread, and those layers is what traps the bubbles, the little pockets of air. So there we have it, as simple as that. That's just a simple fold that we've done now. And now we're just going to put that back in our basket, in the bowl, baking bowl again. Again, we'll cover it, and we'll leave that there. Probably it is 9:20 now, so we'll leave that in there actually until the morning. I'm not going to touch that again for the rest of the day. So it's just 2 folds that it had. And we'll come back in the morning, and we'll put it into the proofing basket to get it ready for baking. Okay, so it is 8:30 in the morning, and we're going to have a look to see how our bread has been progressing, our dough. So as you can see, it has risen really good. What I might do is turn on the light. So a little bit more light. Now, as you can see, it has risen. It's about half the size. It's come halfway up the bowl. So I'm going to tip it out, but this time we're not going to use water. We're going to use a little bit of flour on the table, because we would like it to. We don't want it to get wet at this point of the process. So again, I'm just going to ease it out. Which anything flat that you've got like this is quite flexible, so it's good. I'm just going to ease it out, so because it can stick to the bottom. I'm going to work it around the bowl like this, and it's starting to come off. And as soon as it's done, I'll give a little sprinkle of flour at the top just to put my hand on it. And it has come out of the bowl. Put that to the side. Now, as you can see, this was underneath the bread, and there's lots of little bubbles coming through. So give a little sprinkle of flour on the top again. Now, this part of the process, we're just going to fold it like a clock, I call this. But before we do that, we're going to prep our basket. This is the proving basket. It's about 12 inches, about 4 inches deep. If you don't have one of these, look, I recommend one of these. If you don't have one, a suitably sized bowl will do the same thing. But if you're going to make bread every day, they're a good investment. What we're going to do is we're going to line this, and this is just the cloth, the linen cloth that we used to cover the bread with last night. I'm going to put that in. It's still a little bit damp, which is absolutely fine. I'm going to line it in there, and I'm going to add a little bit of flour to it just to stop it sticking that cloth. Now over here then with the bread, what I want you to do is picture it like a clock. We're just going to flatten it a little bit. We don't want to totally flatten it. And we're going to pinch a little part here, pull it out a couple of inches and fold it in. I'm going to pinch and fold, pinch and fold, pinch and fold like this the whole way around. So we're folding it in on itself. Then we're going to turn it upside down. I'm going to form it into a round shape like that. Now what we want to do is we need to stretch the surface of the dough so that it doesn't break with these little lines here. So we're just going to literally put our hands behind it and on the counter we're going to pull it like this towards us, turn it 90 degrees, repeat the process. So as you can see, it's starting to stretch the surface of the dough. We'll do that a couple more times. We don't want to rip the dough. We want to get a nice even surface on the top. At this stage you can shape it depending on the shape of your basket. So that's now nice and round. Do just a little bit of dusting of flour on the top again. Just rub that in. And then that goes into our proofing basket. As you can see, there's the little folds that we made. Little dusting of flour again. And then we just take the edges and cover it up. And that sits in the proofing basket now until about lunchtime. As I said, it's 8:30 in the morning now, so we'll leave it there until about 12 or 1 o'clock. Well, the consistency we want is that when we touch it, it doesn't completely bounce back, that the little hollow stays in it. And we'll be ready to cook it around about lunchtime then. But here's a tip for you, seeing as this is 8 o'clock in the morning. If you remember step 1 yesterday morning, we fed our sourdough. So if you want to bake again tonight, here's the tip: feed your sourdough now and you'll be ready to repeat the process tonight. Thank you. Okay, so it's 12:30 now and we're going to look at the bread that's been in the basket for about 4 hours. It has risen nicely, and if we give a little poke on it like that, we can see the leaves a little indent in the bread, which means there's air inside of the bread and it's ready to be baked. So we'll just slide that over there. Now if you come over here, we can see in the oven, we've got our oven on to 250 degrees. We have a super cook function on this oven, which doesn't really matter, but you just need to crank your oven up to as hot as it can possibly go. We're going to cook inside a Dutch oven. So I've got the Dutch oven heating up. It has to be really hot. And I've got the lid for the Dutch oven here as well. So the lid is going to go on. I'm going to leave that in the oven for a moment. So that bread is going to go in there right now. So to get it out of here, I have one of these dough scrapers to help in case it sticks to the counter. So I'm just going to tip it out of the basket, take the basket off, and there is the beautifully shaped bread. As you can see here, we've got the little lines from the basket. So we're going to pick that up. That's not sticking to the counter, so we don't need the dough scrape. And it's going to come straight into here like this. Now, with our scorer, this is just a razor blade. I picked this up on Amazon. It cost like 20 bucks or something like that. You attach your razor blade to the top and you can put holes in the bread. Now you need to do this so that the bread has somewhere to rise. You can make any holes you like. It doesn't matter, whatever design you like can be up to you. Now the lid is going to go on the Dutch oven, and that's in the oven. 250 degrees for 30 minutes with the lid on. I'm going to set a timer here while I'm doing this. So 30 minutes with the lid on. Then it's going to have another 20 minutes with the lid off. Then you take it out of the oven and it can cool down. Okay, so we're 30 minutes into the baking and I'm going to take the lid off, and can you see that? It's starting to rise nicely. So that's going to stay in there for another 20 minutes with the lid off. Okay, so the bread's been in the oven now for 20 minutes with the lid off, and it had 30 minutes before that with the lid on. So 50 minutes in total full whack. So we're done cooking. So now if we take it out, you can see in the pot we've got nice caramelization coming on the top. That's what they call it anyway. And we tip it out of here. And we put it on the cooling rack. And as you can see, it's fully cooked. Some nice little brown pieces coming through there, and the where we scored it, you can see where it expanded. And if we look at how much it rose, hang on, I'm just trying to get that in the shot. You see it there, so it actually did pop quite a bit in the oven. So there you have it, and we'll slice that now in a couple of hours time. I'll show you what it looks like on the inside. So the last part of the process, we have our loaf of bread here, which has been cooling on the counter for about 3 hours now, 3-4 hours. So we want to see what it looks like on the inside. Because it's been out on the counter the whole time, the crust has gone a little bit soft. If you want to cut it when it's really crunchy, you need to cut it earlier. But we like it to go a little bit softer. So it's a nice chewy crust, you can tell, and lots of consistent little bubbles in that, which is the way we like it in our family, because it's great for sandwiches, it's great for toast. You don't have big, huge air pockets, but as you can see, there's lots of little air pockets in there. It smells absolutely magnificent. And I am very happy with that, including a nice thick crust at the bottom there, which is delicious and chewy. And then it's really, really soft and center on the inside. So that's the entire process, from starting with the starter almost 30 hours ago now, into something which we can finally eat and enjoy. I hope you enjoyed this process.